She sat alone in their sunlit kitchen, tears carving silent rivers down her face on the darkest anniversary of her life. When her billionaire CEO husband walked in and casually asked, "Is it our wedding anniversary?" "No, that's next month." He had no idea those words just ended everything, because today was the day they lost their baby. And in that single forgotten moment, she decided to become the billionaire he would never touch again. She sat alone at the kitchen island, sunlight pouring through the wide windows of their Santa Monica home, turning the white marble gold. A half-finished canvas rested in front of her, soft garden blooms she had painted weeks earlier, now staring back like an accusation. Her fingers still held the brush, but her hand trembled. Today marked exactly 1 year since the quiet hospital room, the ultrasound screen that went still, the doctor's careful voice saying the words no one wants to hear. Brielle had marked this date in her heart the way some people mark birthdays or first kisses. She had carried it silently for months, folding the grief smaller each day so it wouldn't spill over. She had waited for him to remember. Just once. Just enough to show the loss still lived in him too. The front door clicked open. Footsteps, familiar, hurried. Cade appeared in the doorway, jacket slung over one arm, phone still in his other hand. His tie was loosened, his eyes already carrying the weight of whatever meeting had just ended. She lifted her gaze slowly. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. "Cade, do you know what today is?" He paused near the counter, brow creasing in that automatic way it did when he was trying to recall a calendar item. He glanced at his phone reflexively, then back at her. "Is it the investor dinner?" "No, wait, that's Thursday." A small, tired laugh escaped him, the kind meant to lighten the moment. "Help me out, love. Wedding anniversary's next month, right?" The room seemed to tilt. Her throat closed around the answer she had hoped never to give. "No," she said. "It's the day we lost her. 1 year ago. Today." Silence landed between them like glass breaking in slow motion. His face changed, color draining, eyes widening as the realization hit. But it was too late. The delay had already carved its own wound. Brielle felt the last fragile thread of hope snap inside her chest. This was not anger. This was something quieter, more final. The man who once held her through every night had let the darkest ones slip from his memory entirely. She set the brush down with deliberate care. Her next words came steady, even though her vision blurred. "You forgot." That single forgotten word, today, did more damage than any argument ever could. In one heartbeat, years of shared promises, quiet comforts, and whispered futures collapsed under the weight of what he no longer carried in his memory. The shock wasn't loud. It was a slow, cold realization spreading through her chest. The person who vowed to walk beside her through every shadow had let the heaviest one fall from his mind completely. Have you ever stood in a room with someone you once trusted with your rawest truths, and felt them look straight through the part of you that still bleeds? Have you ever smiled through another day while carrying a grief no one else seems to notice anymore? If those questions settle uncomfortably in your stomach right now, then you already understand the kind of quiet devastation that doesn't scream. It simply erases you from the story you thought you were writing together. This is exactly what happens when relentless drive and soaring success start to eclipse the one heart that believed in the dream from the very first day. Ambition is powerful. It builds empires, changes lives, moves mountains. But when it becomes the only lens through which a man sees his world, the woman who helped him reach those heights can slowly become invisible, even to the person who once swore she was his entire view. Yet here's the question that keeps you watching. What happens when the woman who was forgotten decides she will never allow herself to be erased again? What blooms when the deepest cut becomes the soil for something unbreakable? Stay with me, because the second half of this story isn't about loss. It's about a quiet, determined rise that turns heartbreak into a legacy he could never reach, no matter how many billions he stacked. Welcome, beautiful souls, whether this is your first time stepping into Lord of Hearts or you've been walking these paths with me from the beginning. Thank you for being here. Every click, every minute you choose to spend in these stories matters more than you know. To every woman watching right now, you are extraordinary. You carry grace in your quiet strength, fire in your gentle heart, and resilience that turns even the hardest seasons into seasons of growth. You deserve to be fully seen, not just on the surface, but in the places where you've been hurt, where you've hoped, where you've kept going anyway. You deserve a love that remembers every detail of your story, that holds space for your joys and your sorrows without needing reminders. You deserve celebration, not tomorrow, not someday, but right this moment, exactly as you are. This channel exists because of women like you. Stories that don't just entertain but remind you your worth was never tied to how perfectly someone else treats you. Your power was never diminished by the times you felt overlooked. Your light doesn't dim because someone else forgot to look. It shines brighter when you choose to honor it yourself. So pull up a cozy spot, let your heart open a little wider, and stay close. What you're about to witness is proof that the woman who once felt forgotten can become the one no one can ignore. If the promise of that kind of unbreakable rise already tugs at something deep inside you, let's make this moment count. Hit that like button right now if you've ever turned your own challenges into quiet victories, or if you're ready to cheer for the women who do. Drop A in the comments if you felt that sting of being unseen in love, or share a quick word about what makes you feel truly valued. Share this video with a friend, a sister, or anyone who could use a reminder that their story holds endless potential. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Lord of Hearts. Turn on those notifications so you never miss another tale of love, growth, and the hearts that refuse to stay broken. We're more than viewers here. We're a circle of encouragement, lifting each other through every chapter. Now, let's step fully into this journey. Our tale unfolds in the endless glow of Los Angeles, where the ocean meets ambition, and every corner holds the chance for hearts to connect or collide. Meet Brielle Harper, a young woman whose days began with the simple joy of bringing beauty into the world. Los Angeles in late spring felt alive with possibility. The sun hung high and generous, warming the boardwalk planks of Venice Beach until they radiated heat through flip-flops, salt air mixed with the scent of sunscreen, fresh coffee from passing carts, and the faint sweetness of blooming jasmine climbing the fences. Street musicians strummed lazy chords, skateboard wheels clacked over concrete, and laughter floated above it all like sea spray. This was the place where people came to reinvent themselves, or simply to remember who they still could be. Brielle Harper arrived at Petals and Light every morning at 7. The small shop sat tucked between a vintage record store and a smoothie bar, its glass front painted with curling vines in soft gold. Inside, wooden shelves held galvanized buckets overflowing with color, coral ranunculus, creamy gardenias, spiky protea, and always, sunflowers standing tall like they had somewhere important to be. She loved opening the door each day, letting the breeze rush in and carry the ocean's hello across the threshold. At 28, Brielle had built a life around small, deliberate beauties. She arranged stems with the same care she gave to her own thoughts, never forcing a bloom, always listening to what each flower needed. Customers left her shop carrying more than bouquets. They carried a moment of quiet joy she had helped create. She wore her hair in a loose braid most days, strands escaping to frame her face, and her caramel eyes caught light the way tide pools hold the sky. People told her she looked peaceful. She felt peaceful most of the time. One Thursday in May, the bell above the door rang at 2:17 p.m. Brielle looked up from tying a ribbon around a cluster of white peonies and met the gaze of a man who seemed both perfectly at home and slightly out of place in the flower-scented calm. He was tall, broad-shouldered, without being imposing, dressed in a pale linen shirt with sleeves rolled to the elbows and dark jeans that had seen real days. His hair was dark and slightly tousled, as though the wind off the Pacific had claimed it earlier. He carried himself with easy confidence, but his eyes held a flicker of uncertainty when they landed on the riot of color around him. "Hi," he said, voice warm and low. "I need something bright. My mom's birthday is tomorrow, and she loves anything that feels like summer." Brielle smiled, the real one, the one that reached her eyes. "Summer in a bouquet. I can do that." She moved behind the counter and selected a generous handful of sunflowers, their heavy heads nodding as though in agreement. She added sprigs of eucalyptus for freshness and a few stems of golden yarrow to echo the petals. As she worked, he watched her hands, steady, precise, almost reverent. When she handed him the finished arrangement, their fingers brushed, just for a second, long enough for warmth to travel up her arm and settle somewhere behind her ribs. He looked down at the flowers, then back at her. "This is perfect. Thank you." "You're welcome." She tilted her head. "She'll love them." He paid, lingered a moment longer than necessary, then left with a small nod and a half-smile that stayed in her mind long after the door closed. He returned the next day. No flowers this time, just him, leaning one shoulder against the doorframe, hands in his pockets. "I wanted to tell you," she cried, in a good way, said it was the best bouquet she's ever received. Brielle laughed softly. "I'm glad. Sunflowers have that effect." He stepped inside. "I'm Cade, by the way." Brielle. They talked for 20 minutes, about nothing and everything. He asked about her favorite flower to paint. She admitted she loved capturing the way light hit poppy petals at dusk. She asked about his work, tech, something with apps that helped people feel less alone. When a customer came in, he stepped aside politely, but he didn't leave. He waited until the shop was quiet again. The pattern began. He appeared most afternoons, sometimes with an excuse, a colleague's birthday, a thank you gift, sometimes with none at all. They stood at the counter while she trimmed stems or misted leaves, and words poured out easily. She told him how she started painting after her grandmother passed, how color became her way of holding on to joy. He told her about late nights in a garage startup, coding until his eyes burned, because he believed connection could change the world. One evening in early June, he arrived just as she flipped the closed sign. The sky outside had turned tangerine and rose. "Walk with me?" he asked. She hesitated only a heartbeat. "Let me lock up." They stepped onto the boardwalk as the sun dipped low. The ocean stretched wide and silver blue, waves folding over themselves in steady rhythm. They walked without hurry, shoulders brushing now and then. He pointed out a pod of dolphins far out, their fins slicing the surface like dark commas. She laughed when a seagull swooped low and stole a French fry from a nearby tourist. At the edge of the sand, where the crowds thinned, he stopped. The air smelled of salt and possibility. "Brielle," he said, turning to face her fully. "I've been coming here every day, not because I need flowers." She met his gaze. "I know." He stepped closer. The breeze lifted strands of her hair across her cheek. He reached up, brushed them back with the lightest touch. His fingers lingered near her jaw. "I like the way you see things," he said quietly. "The way you make ordinary moments feel important." Her breath caught. "You make me feel seen." He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their first kiss happened under the fading gold of sunset, waves crashing like applause in the distance. His lips were warm, careful at first, then deeper, tasting of salt air and unspoken promises. One hand cupped the back of her neck, the other rested at her waist, steady and sure. She rose onto her toes, fingers curling into his shirt, and the world narrowed to the press of mouths, the soft sound of breath, the steady heartbeat she could feel against her palm. When they parted, foreheads touching, he whispered, "I've wanted to do that since the first time our hands touched over those sunflowers." She smiled against his lips. "Took you long enough." The weeks that followed felt like summer stretched into forever. Coffee dates turned into full mornings at Abbot Kinney, sharing avocado toast and stealing bites from each other's plates. Sunset picnics on the sand became ritual, blankets, cold drinks, her sketching quick portraits of him while he read aloud from whatever book he was carrying. They walked hand in hand along the canals in Venice, stopping to watch egrets lift from the water. Nights ended in his loft, overlooking the marina or her small apartment above the shop, bodies close, voices low, laughter spilling into quiet hours. He called her my light one evening as they lay tangled in sheets, city glow filtering through half-open blinds. She traced the line of his collarbone and answered, "You feel like home." Every touch carried intention, his thumb brushing her wrist when they crossed streets, her fingers sliding through his hair when they kissed goodnight. They moved together with the ease of people discovering how perfectly they fit. By August, the jacaranda trees along the boulevards had burst into violet clouds, petals drifting like confetti. Cade grew quieter some days, more thoughtful. Brielle noticed but didn't press. One Saturday, he texted her to meet him in Malibu at sunset. When she arrived at the private rooftop terrace he'd rented high above the cliffs, the scene stole her breath. Fairy lights looped overhead, twinkling against the deepening sky. Tables held vases of lilies, her favorite, their fragrance mingling with the salt breeze. A small speaker played soft acoustic guitar. He stood near the railing, hands in his pockets, looking nervous in a way she'd never seen. She stepped toward him. "Cade, what is all this?" He took her hands. His were warm, slightly unsteady. "I've spent months building something I thought would change the world," he said. "But the truth is, you changed mine the day you handed me those sunflowers." He dropped to one knee. From his pocket came a simple ring, white gold, a single round diamond catching the last light like captured fire. "Brielle Harper," he said, voice thick. "You are my partner, my calm, my joy. Marry me. Let's build everything, together." Tears blurred the ocean view. She laughed through them, nodding before words could form. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He rose, pulled her close, and kissed her as the sky turned indigo, and the first stars appeared above the Pacific. In that moment, wrapped in his arms with the world falling away below them, Brielle felt the kind of happiness that makes time pause, just long enough to remember every detail forever. The wedding took place on a clear September morning at a private stretch of Zuma Beach in Malibu. No grand ballroom, no long guest list, just 30 of their closest people standing barefoot in warm sand, the Pacific rolling in steady and approving. A simple wooden arch, wrapped in white roses and trailing greenery, framed the couple against the horizon. The sky was the exact shade of hope Brielle had always painted in her sunrises. She walked toward Cade, wearing a flowing ivory dress that skimmed her ankles, barefoot like everyone else. Her hair fell loose in soft waves, a single lily tucked behind one ear. When she reached him, he took both her hands and held them as though they were the only steady thing in the world. His eyes never left hers. The officiant spoke briefly about love as a partnership, as a choice renewed every day. Then came the vows. Cade went first. His voice carried over the low crash of waves. "Brielle, from the moment you handed me those sunflowers, I knew I'd found someone who sees the world the way it deserves to be seen, with kindness, with color, with courage. I promise to remember you in every version of yourself, the woman who laughs at bad puns, the one who cries at sunsets, the one who keeps going when everything feels heavy. I promise to choose you every single day, to listen when words are hard, to hold you when silence is louder. You are my home, always." Brielle's throat tightened. She swallowed once, then spoke. "Cade, you walked into my shop and stayed long after the flowers were paid for. You made me feel like my quiet dreams mattered. I promise to stand beside you through every launch, every late night, every doubt. I promise to remind you who you are when the world tries to tell you otherwise. I promise to love you with open hands, not holding too tight, but never letting go. You are my light, always." Rings slid onto fingers. A kiss followed, slow, certain, tasting of salt air and shared futures. Friends cheered, petals rained down from small baskets, and for one perfect hour, time belonged only to them. They honeymooned quietly in a rented cottage farther up the coast. Days spent walking tide pools, nights wrapped in blankets on the deck, listening to the ocean breathe. When they returned to Santa Monica, life settled into a rhythm that felt both new and deeply familiar. Their home was a 2-story townhouse a few blocks from the beach. White walls, wide windows, hardwood floors that creaked softly underfoot. The living room opened to a small balcony, where morning coffee became sacred. Brielle kept fresh flowers on every surface. Cade kept his laptop nearby, but closed it more often than open. Evenings were their favorite time. Most nights they cooked together, simple meals of grilled fish, avocado salad, whatever herbs she'd brought home from the shop. Afterward, they moved to the sofa, lights low, a classic film flickering on the screen. She curled against his side, legs tucked under a throw blanket. His arm rested across her shoulders, fingers tracing idle patterns along her upper arm. Slow circles, gentle strokes that made her hum contentedly. Sometimes the movie became background noise. He'd turn his head, press a kiss to her temple. She'd tilt her face up, and kisses deepened, unhurried, exploratory, full of the kind of knowing that only grows with time. His hand would slide to the small of her back, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. Whispers followed. "You smell like lilies and home," he'd murmur against her neck. She'd answer, "You feel like safety," her lips brushing his collarbone. They made love with the windows open to the night breeze, sheets tangling around legs, laughter breaking through the quiet, when one of them said something silly mid-kiss. Afterward, they lay facing each other, foreheads touching, fingers laced, talking in low voices about nothing and everything until sleep claimed them. Brielle watched Cade's startup grow with quiet pride. The company, called Connect Sphere, had moved from a cramped garage to sleek offices in Culver City. Funding rounds came faster than expected. The app's user numbers climbed weekly. She celebrated every milestone, the first 1,000,000 downloads with champagne on their balcony, the first magazine feature with takeout tacos and proud kisses. She supported him in ways both practical and emotional. When pitch decks kept him up until dawn, she brought coffee to his desk at home and sat nearby sketching while he rehearsed. She listened to every version of his investor presentation, offering notes that sharpened the human side of the story. Tell them why connection matters to you, not just what the numbers say. He always listened. He always thanked her with a long embrace. She hosted small dinners for his team, candle-lit tables on the balcony, laughter echoing over the rooftops. She remembered names, asked about families, and made people feel valued. Cade watched her move through the room and felt a swell of gratitude so deep it stole his breath. "You make everything better," he told her one night after the last guest left. She smiled against his chest. "We make everything better." But subtle shifts began to appear. Phone calls stretched longer. Emails pinged at midnight. Weekends that once belonged to slow mornings now included just one quick meeting that turned into hours. Brielle noticed the way his eyes sometimes drifted to his screen while she spoke. She noticed the apologies that came more frequently. "Sorry, babe. Call ran over. I'll be home soon, promise." She never complained. She understood ambition's pull. Still, she began marking calendar reminders for herself alone. Doctor appointments she hadn't yet told him about. Quiet hopes she tucked away like fragile petals. One Sunday morning in early December, she woke before him. Sunlight slanted across the bed. She watched him sleep, lashes dark against his cheeks, mouth slightly open, and felt a pang she couldn't name. Not fear, not anger, just the faint awareness that something precious was beginning to slip through their fingers while they were both still holding on. She kissed his forehead softly. He stirred, pulled her close without fully waking, and for a few minutes everything felt right again. But the cracks, though small, were there. And time has a way of widening what is already beginning to separate. Chapter 3, Dreams Deferred, Fertility Struggles Begin, Word Count 3004. By the spring after their first anniversary, the dream of children had moved from casual conversation to quiet certainty. Brielle pictured it often, a small hand in hers while they walked the Venice boardwalk, tiny footprints in wet sand, bedtime stories read in the same soft voice she used when arranging flowers. Cade shared the vision. Late at night, after the city lights, dimmed beyond their balcony, he would rest his palm on her stomach and murmur, "One day soon, this house is going to be full of noise and chaos and love." They decided to start trying in earnest that April. No more waiting for the perfect time after the next funding round or product launch. They cleared calendars, adjusted routines, and let hope settle over their days like warm sunlight. The first few months carried easy optimism. They tracked cycles with gentle excitement, marked promising days on a shared app, celebrated small signs with extra-long kisses and whispered plans. Brielle bought a tiny pair of baby sneakers on impulse one afternoon, white with yellow ducks. and tucked them in the back of a drawer like a secret promise. Cade found them weeks later, held them in his hands, and pulled her close with a grin that made her heart expand. Month 6 arrived without fanfare. Negative tests became routine. Brielle told herself it was normal. Many couples waited longer. Cade kissed her forehead each time and said, "We've got time." Month 10 brought the first quiet worry. She mentioned it lightly over breakfast. "Maybe we should see someone." He nodded, already reaching for his phone to find a recommendation. The first appointment was scheduled for a Tuesday in February. The fertility specialist's office sat in a modern building near Cedars Sinai. Clean lines, soft lighting, magazines about parenting and travel. Brielle sat on the exam table in a paper gown, legs swinging slightly, while Cade held her hand. The doctor was kind, thorough, explaining tests and timelines without rush. Blood work followed. Ultrasounds, more questions. Cade attended every visit he could, asking sharp, focused questions that showed he was fully present. Brielle appreciated that, his way of turning emotion into action. The results came on a rainy Thursday in late March. They sat side by side in the doctor's office again, the window streaked with water. The doctor spoke carefully. "Brielle, the tests show diminished ovarian reserve and some structural challenges that make conception more difficult. It's not impossible. Many women in your situation go on to have children, but it will likely require assistance, medications, possibly IUI or IVF. The emotional and physical demands can be significant." The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples spread outward. Brielle felt her chest tighten, breath shallow. She nodded once, twice, because nodding seemed safer than speaking. Cade's grip on her hand increased, thumbs stroking the back of her knuckles in a steady rhythm. They drove home in silence at first. Rain tapped the windshield like impatient fingers. Halfway across the city, Brielle finally spoke. I thought it would just happen." Cade glanced over, eyes soft with everything he couldn't fix. "It still can. We'll do whatever it takes." That night he held her on the sofa while she cried, deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place she hadn't known existed. He didn't try to stop the tears or offer quick solutions. He simply wrapped both arms around her, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other rubbing slow circles between her shoulder blades. When the crying eased, he kissed her temple, her cheek, the corner of her mouth. "We're in this together," he said against her skin. "Every step, every appointment, every wait. I'm not going anywhere." She believed him because she needed to, because his arms still felt like the safest place in the world. The next months blurred into a cycle of hope and disappointment. Hormone injections left her tired and tender. Monitoring appointments meant early mornings, driving through pre-dawn traffic. Cade rearranged meetings when he could. When he couldn't, he called during breaks to ask how she felt, what the numbers looked like that day. They tried IUI 3 times. Each 2-week wait stretched into eternity. Brielle painted through the uncertainty, canvases filled with oceans cradling single blooms, skies heavy with unshed rain. Cade framed the finished pieces and hung them around the house like quiet guardians. After the third failed attempt, in early November, the grief hit hardest. Brielle woke before dawn, slipped out to the balcony, and sat with her knees drawn up while the city slowly brightened. When Cade found her there, tears already drying on her cheeks, he knelt in front of her without a word. He rested his forehead against hers, hands framing her face. "I hate that you're hurting," he whispered. "I hate that I can't carry this part for you." She touched his jaw. "You're carrying it with me. That's enough." He pulled her into his lap, arms tight around her waist. They stayed like that until the sun cleared the rooftops, breathing in rhythm, letting silence say what words couldn't. To keep the flame alive amid the strain, Cade planned escapes, short, deliberate breaks from doctors and calendars. The first getaway came in December, a weekend cabin in the Santa Monica Mountains, high enough to feel removed from the city's constant pulse. They arrived Friday evening as light snow dusted the pines, rare for Southern California, magical in its unexpectedness. The cabin was small, cedar-scented, with a stone fireplace and windows that framed treetops and distant city glow. Cade built a fire while Brielle unpacked groceries. They cooked side by side, pasta with garlic and herbs, wine poured into mismatched glasses. After dinner, they moved to the rug in front of the hearth, blankets piled around them. He pulled her back against his chest, arms encircling her waist. His chin rested on her shoulder. "Tell me what you need tonight," he murmured. She turned in his hold until they faced each other. "Just you. No thinking about tomorrow. Just us." He kissed her slowly, lips brushing, parting, deepening with the kind of patience that rebuilds trust in the body. Hands moved with care, his sliding under her sweater to trace the curve of her spine, hers threading through his hair, tugging gently. Clothes fell away in quiet layers. Skin met skin in the firelight, warm and deliberate. They made love on the thick rug, bodies moving in familiar cadence, breaths mingling with crackling wood. Every touch felt like a promise renewed, his mouth on her collarbone, her nails pressing lightly into his shoulders, whispered names exchanged between kisses. When the release came, it carried a tenderness that bordered on reverence. Afterward, they lay tangled, firelight dancing across bare skin. He traced invisible patterns on her stomach, gentle, protective. "We'll keep going," he said softly. "But tonight, you're just Brielle, my wife, my everything." She pressed her lips to his chest, right over his heart. "And you're just Cade, mine." They returned to the city on Sunday refreshed, carrying the memory of that weekend like a talisman. 2 more mountain getaways followed in the spring, one in March when wildflowers carpeted the hills, another in May when the air smelled of sage and new growth. Each time, they left phones on silent, cooked simple meals, walked narrow trails hand in hand, and rediscovered each other in the quiet spaces between trying. Yet even those respites couldn't stop time. Another cycle began, another round of injections, another wait. By late summer, Brielle's hope had thinned to something fragile but stubborn. She still smiled when Cade kissed her goodbye in the morning. She still arranged flowers with the same care. But inside, a quiet question grew louder. How long can we keep carrying this before one of us stumbles? If you're feeling the weight of unspoken pain right now, if you've ever waited for good news that didn't come, or carried a longing no one else quite understands, pause for a second. Hit like on this video to send quiet strength to someone who needs it today. Comment below, what keeps you going when hope feels far away? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read. Share this story with a friend, a sister, anyone holding a similar ache in silence. And if these moments of real, raw love and resilience speak to you, subscribe to Lord of Hearts and turn on notifications. We're here for the stories that remind us, healing doesn't always look loud. It often looks like 2 people choosing each other again and again, even when the road is long. ConnectSphere crossed the $1 billion valuation mark on a crisp October morning in the 2nd year after its wedding. The news broke during a live earnings call streamed from the Culver City headquarters. Cade sat at the center of a long glass table, flanked by his executive team, wearing the same navy suit Brielle had picked out for him the night before. When the number flashed on screen, $1.2 billion, he allowed himself one brief, unguarded smile before returning to measured answers about user growth, market expansion, and the next phase of global rollout. The office erupted in applause the moment the call ended. Champagne corks popped. Phones buzzed with congratulations from investors, journalists, and friends. Cade texted Brielle first. "We did it. $1 billion club. Coming home soon to celebrate properly." She replied within seconds. "So proud of you." Waiting with open arms. That evening, she prepared his favorite dinner, seared salmon, roasted asparagus, and a bottle of the Cabernet they'd opened on their honeymoon. Candles flickered on the dining table. When he walked through the door at 9:47 p.m., tie loosened and eyes bright with adrenaline, she met him in the hallway with a long embrace. "You're incredible," she whispered against his shoulder. He kissed her deeply, hands framing her face. "Couldn't have done any of it without you." They ate late, laughed over stories from the day, and ended the night tangled together in bed, bodies moving with the same familiar tenderness that had carried them through harder months. For a few hours, the milestone felt shared, something they had built side by side. But the billion-dollar label brought more than celebration. It brought scrutiny, pressure, and a calendar that no longer bent to personal time. Board meetings multiplied. International trips doubled. Media requests arrived daily. Cade's phone became an extension of his hand, vibrating through dinners, movie nights, quiet mornings on the balcony. The first missed moment came 3 weeks later. Brielle had scheduled a follow-up ultrasound, routine monitoring after the last treatment cycle. She mentioned it casually over breakfast, Tuesday at 10. "I'll text you after." He nodded, already scrolling through emails. Tuesday morning arrived with a last-minute investor breakfast in downtown LA. He left at 7:30 a.m. with a quick kiss and a promise, "Call me the second you're out." She sat in the exam room alone, paper gown crinkling, staring at the ceiling tiles. The technician moved the wand in silence. No heartbeat, no change, just the same quiet verdict delivered with professional gentleness. Brielle dressed, paid the copay, and drove home through traffic that felt heavier than usual. She texted him the update, same as last time, no news. "Heading back now." His reply came 40 minutes later. "Damn. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there. The meeting ran over. Love you. Talk tonight?" She stared at the screen until it dimmed, then set the phone face down on the counter. That night, he arrived after 11 p.m., exhaustion etched around his eyes. He found her in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, staring at a half-finished canvas, deep indigo waves cradling a single pale rose. He knelt beside her chair. "I hate missing these," he said quietly. She touched his cheek. "I know." He pulled her into his lap on the floor, arms tight around her waist. They stayed like that for a long time, breathing together, but the silence carried a new weight. Excuses began to stack like unread messages. A forgotten dinner reservation for their monthly date night. The London team needed an emergency sink. A missed painting exhibit she'd been excited about for months. Traffic on the 405 was brutal, and then the parking. An anniversary of their first IUI attempt passed without acknowledgement, he realized. 2 days later, and sent flowers with a note, better late than never. "Love you more every day." Brielle never raised her voice. She never accused. Instead, she withdrew in small, almost invisible ways. She stopped mentioning appointments unless he asked directly. She painted longer hours in the spare room she'd turned into a studio, canvases leaning against walls, brushes scattered across the table like fallen soldiers. The paintings grew quieter, muted palettes, solitary blooms against vast empty backgrounds, petals curling inward as though protecting something fragile. She still greeted him with a smile when he walked in late. She still kissed him goodnight, but the light in her eyes dimmed a fraction each time he chose work over presence. He noticed. How could he not? But the noticing came wrapped in guilt he pushed aside with more work, more calls, more promises of soon. One Saturday in early February, he promised a full day together. No laptop, no phone on silent. They planned a drive up the coast, a picnic at El Matador Beach. Brielle packed sandwiches, fruit, and the tiny duck sneakers she'd kept hidden in the drawer for over a year now. She placed them on the passenger seat like a quiet offering. He woke to a 6 a.m. call from Singapore. "An acquisition deal is teetering on collapse. I'll be quick," he told her, already heading to the office corner of their bedroom. It became 3 hours. By the time he emerged, the sky had clouded over, and Brielle sat on the balcony with cold coffee, sneakers back in the drawer. He knelt in front of her chair. "I'm sorry." She looked at him for a long moment. "I know you are." They didn't go to the beach that day. Instead, they stayed home. He tried to make up for it, cooked lunch, put on music, pulled her close on the sofa. She let him hold her, but her body stayed slightly stiff, her responses softer than before. The longing inside her grew sharper. She ached for the man who once remembered every detail without effort. She ached for the shared hope that had once felt unbreakable. Most of all, she ached for a future that kept receding, one missed moment at a time. Cade felt the distance too, though he framed it differently. He told himself the empire would secure their future. Better doctors, more options, financial freedom to pause when they needed to. He told himself he was doing this for them. Yet each late night, he came home to find her asleep on the studio couch, paint smudged on her cheek, a canvas of lonely flowers drying beside her, and something in his chest tightened with a guilt he couldn't outrun. By late spring, the rhythm had solidified, his world expanding outward in boardrooms and balance sheets, hers contracting inward to the quiet studio and the silent grief she painted into every stroke. They still loved each other, deeply, fiercely, but love stretched across widening gaps begins to feel thin at the edges. The tension lived in the small silences, a calendar reminder he never saw, a hopeful glance she never voiced, a hand reaching across the bed only to find empty sheets. Neither spoke the words aloud, but both felt them pressing closer every day. Something had to give. The heat pressed down relentlessly that summer morning in Los Angeles. Brielle had marked the calendar quietly weeks earlier, the 1-year anniversary of their first miscarriage. She had circled the date in soft pencil, the same way she once circled hopeful days long ago. No reminders sent, no mention over breakfast. She simply waited to see if the memory still lived in him the way it lived in her, raw, persistent, impossible to ignore. She woke early, before the alarm. Sunlight already pressed against the curtains. She slipped out of bed, leaving Cade sleeping on his side, one arm flung across the empty space she usually occupied. In the kitchen, she brewed coffee, the rich scent filling the room while she stood at the island staring at the half-finished painting she had worked on the night before. A single rose suspended above dark water, petals beginning to curl at the edges. She had cried while painting it, not loud sobs, just silent tears that fell onto the canvas and blended into the shadows she had layered around the bloom. Now the rose looked almost alive, fragile but defiant. She wore a loose white linen dress, hair pulled into a low knot, makeup minimal. She wanted to feel like herself today, raw, honest, present. She had cancelled 2 flower orders at the shop so she could stay home. No distractions, just the memory and the hope that he would walk through the door remembering. Cade came downstairs still in yesterday's t-shirt and sweatpants, phone already in hand. He kissed the top of her head on his way to the coffee maker. "Morning, love," he murmured, voice rough from sleep. "Morning." He poured a mug, leaned against the counter, and scrolled through notifications. She watched him for a long moment, the familiar slope of his shoulders, the way his thumb flicked across the screen, the small crease between his brows when something required attention. She took a slow breath. "Cade," she said softly, "do you know what day is?" He looked up, brow smoothing as he tried to place the question. A beat passed. Then another. "Tuesday," he offered, half smiling like it might be a joke. "Wait. Is it the investor lunch?" "No, that's Thursday." He glanced back at his phone. "Help me out here. Wedding anniversaries in September." The kitchen seemed to shrink. Air thickened. Brielle felt the exact moment her heart gave one hard final lurch before going still. She set her coffee down with careful precision. Her voice stayed low, steady. "No, it's not the anniversary." He frowned, searching her face. Then, 1 year ago today, she said, each word measured, "We lost the baby. The first one." The ultrasound went quiet. "You held my hand in that room. You cried with me in the car on the way home. Do you remember?" Silence stretched so long, she could hear the refrigerator hum. Cade's expression changed, color draining, eyes widening as the realization hit. His mouth opened, closed. The phone slipped from his fingers onto the counter with a soft clatter. "Oh God," he whispered. "Brielle." He stepped forward. She didn't move. "I forgot," he said, voice cracking on the last word. "I completely forgot." She nodded once. Tears welled, but did not fall yet. "Yes." He reached for her. She lifted a hand, small palm out, stopping him mid-step. "Don't," she said. Not angry, just final. He froze. "I've been so buried. The acquisition talks, the board, the new funding round. I didn't even look at the calendar. I didn't mean. I know you didn't mean to." Her voice remained quiet. "That's what makes it worse. You didn't have to try to remember. You used to. without effort, without reminders, and now the deepest loss of my life is just another day that slipped through the cracks because your world got too big. Tears finally spilled over. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, impatient. I carried this every single day for a year, she continued. I marked it, I felt it, I painted it. I waited for you to feel it too, just once. Just enough to show me I'm still in there somewhere, beyond the headlines, beyond the valuation, beyond the next call. But I'm not anymore. Cade's eyes filled. You are. You're everything. I've been trying to build something secure for us. For us? The word came out sharp, then softened again. This house is quiet because of it. Our bed is half empty most nights because of it. My appointments happen alone because of it. I stopped telling you about them because I got tired of hearing, I'll try to make the next one. He sank onto one of the bar stools, hands covering his face for a moment. When he looked up, tears tracked down his cheeks. I failed you, he said hoarsely. I see that now. I see how much I've missed. I thought if I just pushed a little harder, got us to the place where we could breathe, then we could focus on the family part. But I pushed right past you. Brielle walked to the window, arms wrapped around herself. Outside, palm fronds swayed in the hot breeze. Normal life continued. Cars passing, a neighbor watering plants, a dog barking somewhere down the street. I love you, she said without turning. I've loved you through every high and every low, but love without memory feels like abandonment, and I can't keep abandoning myself to wait for you to notice I'm hurting. He stood slowly. Tell me how to fix this, please. She turned then. Her eyes were red-rimmed but clear. You can't fix a year of forgetting with one conversation. I need space, real space, to remember who I am when I'm not waiting for you to see me. He stepped closer, careful, slow. Where will you go? Silver Lake. I found a small place a few weeks ago, month to month. Just enough room for my paints and my thoughts. The words landed like stones. He flinched. You've been planning this. I've been surviving this, she corrected gently. And surviving isn't the same as living. She moved past him to the hallway closet, pulled out the small suitcase she had packed nights earlier. Clothes, sketchbooks, the tiny duck sneakers she could no longer bear to keep hidden. She set it by the front door. Cade watched, helpless. When? Today, after we talk, after I say what I need to say. They stood in the middle of the kitchen for what felt like hours, but was only minutes. Tears fell freely, hers, his, no shouting, no accusations. Just the raw, aching truth of two people who once fit perfectly and now stood on opposite sides of a widening divide. She walked to the counter, tore a sheet from the small notepad by the phone and wrote, Cade, I still love you. That hasn't changed. What's changed is my ability to keep disappearing so you can keep building. I need to find my own footing again. Please, don't follow me yet. Give me time. Give us time. I hope one day we can remember each other without pain standing between us. Brielle. She folded the note once, set it beside his coffee mug. He read it in silence. When he looked up, his face was wet. I don't want to lose you. You already did, she said softly. The question now is whether we can find our way back. She picked up the suitcase. He didn't try to stop her. He simply followed her to the door, opened it, watched her step into the hallway. At the elevator, she turned one last time. Take care of yourself, she said. You too. The doors closed. She leaned against the wall as the car descended, tears falling freely now. When she reached the lobby, sunlight poured through the glass doors, bright, indifferent, moving on. She stepped outside, suitcase rolling behind her, and walked toward the car she had parked down the street. The drive to Silver Lake took 40 minutes in midday traffic. She didn't turn on the radio. She let the silence hold her. When she unlocked the new apartment, small, sunlit, one bedroom with a tiny balcony overlooking a courtyard of succulents, she set the suitcase down and stood in the center of the empty living room. For the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt like possibility. The Silver Lake apartment measured barely 800 square feet, but it held sunlight like a promise. Tall windows faced east, flooding the main room with morning gold that caught dust motes and turned them into tiny stars. Brielle set her suitcase in the corner the first afternoon, and did not unpack for 3 days. She simply sat on the bare floor, back against the wall, knees drawn up, letting the quiet settle around her like a blanket she had forgotten she needed. On the 4th morning, she opened the suitcase. Clothes went into the narrow closet, sketchbooks stacked on the small table by the window. The tiny duck sneakers, still wrapped in tissue, found a place on the windowsill where light would touch them every day. She looked at them for a long time, then turned away and picked up a fresh canvas. She painted without plan. No pencil sketch, just color straight from the tube. Deep emerald leaves curling protectively around a single open bloom. Petals the color of sunrise. Thorns rendered in soft gold instead of sharp black. When she stepped back at dusk, the painting breathed. It looked like survival dressed as beauty. She photographed it with her phone, natural light spilling across the surface, and posted it to Instagram without caption. Just the image. Within hours, comments appeared. This made me cry in the best way. I feel this so much. Are you selling prints? The next day, she answered one message, not yet. But thank you for seeing it. That single reply opened a door she hadn't known was closed. Over the following weeks, she painted more. Every morning after coffee, every evening after the city lights came on. Each piece carried a piece of what she had carried alone. Longing turned to color, grief turned to growth, silence turned to bloom. She began adding short captions. Some days the hardest part is believing you still deserve beauty. Healing doesn't erase the scar, it teaches the skin how to shine around it. The posts gained quiet momentum. Women shared them in private stories. Messages arrived daily. Your art is helping me talk about my own loss. I cried looking at this, then smiled. Can I buy the rose one? Brielle created an online shop on a simple platform, Blossom Hearts. No grand launch, just a link in her bio. The first sale came 3 days later, a print of the sunrise bloom. She wrapped it herself, wrote a handwritten note, "May this remind you that you are still growing," and mailed it with shaking hands. Word moved faster than she expected. One buyer posted a photo of the print above her bed with the caption, "This arrived exactly when I needed it." The post was shared. Then shared again. Within a month, orders arrived from Portland, Austin, Miami, even London. Brielle worked late into the night fulfilling them, printing, packaging, handwriting notes until her fingers cramped. She started sharing more openly. A short video one evening, her sitting cross-legged on the floor, paint on her cheek, speaking directly to the camera. I lost a lot last year. A dream, a sense of myself. I thought the pain would always be louder than anything else, but I started painting it instead of hiding it, and something shifted. If you're carrying something heavy right now, you don't have to carry it alone. You can turn it into something beautiful, even if it's just for you. The video reached thousands. Comments flooded in, stories of miscarriages, broken relationships, quiet depressions, small daily griefs. Brielle read every one. She replied when she could. She cried when the weight felt too familiar. She kept painting. 6 months after moving to Silver Lake, Blossom Hearts outgrew her apartment. Packages stacked against walls. Shipping supplies filled the kitchen counter. She rented a small studio space in the arts district, high ceilings, concrete floors, one wall of windows. She hired her first team member, Maya, a graphic designer who had followed her from the beginning and offered to help with packaging during a late-night message. Maya brought energy and order. Together they created product mock-ups, built a proper website, expanded the line to include journals with healing prompts, tote bags, candles scented like coastal sage. Brielle hosted her first in-person workshop in the new space. 10 women gathered around long tables, canvases in front of them, paint and brushes supplied. She spoke softly at the start. This isn't about making perfect art. It's about giving your feelings a place to live outside your chest. Whatever comes out is welcome. They painted for 3 hours. Some cried. Some laughed. At the end, every canvas told a different story, yet all carried the same quiet courage. Brielle hugged each woman goodbye. One stayed behind, a quiet woman in her 40s, holding her finished piece like it was fragile glass. "Thank you," she said. "I haven't let myself feel anything in years. Today I did. And I'm still here." Brielle's throat tightened. "You've always been here. You just gave yourself permission to be seen." Word of the workshops spread. Waitlists formed. She added more dates. She began collaborating with local wellness spaces, yoga studios, therapy groups, offering art sessions focused on grief, self-compassion, renewal. 9 months into the journey, an LA-based venture capitalist reached out after seeing a feature on a lifestyle site, the woman turning heartbreak into healing through art. He asked for a meeting. Brielle arrived at his office in a simple linen dress, hair in a loose braid, carrying only a portfolio of prints and a journal filled with customer letters. She spoke plainly. "This isn't about selling products. It's about giving people tools to feel less alone in their pain. The art is the bridge. The message is the destination." He listened for 40 minutes without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned forward. "You have something rare, authenticity that scales. We'd like to invest." The funding round closed 3 months later. Enough capital to hire more artists, expand production, build a proper app. The app, Blossom Companion, launched quietly, daily prompts paired with guided art exercises, mood trackers, community forums moderated with care. Users could share their creations privately or publicly, tagged with stories of healing. Downloads climbed steadily. Reviews arrived daily. "This app reminded me I'm allowed to feel everything and still keep going." By the end of the 2nd year, Blossom Hearts had moved into a bright, airy headquarters in Culver City. Open floor plan, walls covered in customer-submitted artwork, a corner dedicated to free workshops for women in transition. The brand appeared in national publications, from Silent Grief to multi-million-dollar movement. Valuation estimates hovered in the hundreds of millions. Brielle's face appeared on panels, in interviews, always speaking the same core truth. Self-love isn't a luxury, it's survival. And healing doesn't mean erasing pain. It means learning to walk beside it with open hands. She still painted every week, usually alone in the early mornings before anyone arrived. The canvases had changed, bolder colors, larger blooms, backgrounds no longer empty but filled with light. She kept one small painting on her desk, a single rose in full bloom, thorns rendered in shimmering gold. A reminder that strength often grows exactly where the deepest cuts once were. Brielle no longer waited for someone else to see her worth. She had learned to see it herself, and in doing so, she had given thousands of other women the courage to do the same. If her strength inspires you right now, if you feel even a small spark of recognition that pain can become power, let's make this moment matter. Smash that like button to celebrate every woman who's ever turned her ashes into something beautiful. Comment below, what lesson from Brielle's journey hits home for you today? Your words could be the encouragement someone else needs. Share this video with a friend, a sister, anyone who could use a reminder that they are stronger than their hardest days. And if stories of real transformation and heart-centered love move you, subscribe to Lord of Hearts. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. We're building a community where healing is honored, growth is celebrated, and no one has to rise alone. Blossom Hearts had grown into something Brielle never fully anticipated, a quiet force that reached far beyond her Silver Lake studio. Invitations arrived regularly now, speaking slots at wellness summits, features in national magazines, partnerships with organizations supporting women's health. One crisp autumn evening, she accepted an invitation to a charity gala in Beverly Hills, hosted by a foundation dedicated to fertility awareness and emotional healing. She arrived in a simple emerald green dress she had chosen herself. No stylist, no entourage, just the quiet confidence of someone who had rebuilt her life, one brushstroke at a time. The ballroom glowed with soft amber light. Tables held centerpieces of white orchids and floating candles. Guests moved in elegant clusters, laughter rising above the gentle piano music. Brielle stood near a window overlooking the city lights, holding a glass of sparkling water, when a man approached. "Excuse me," he said, voice calm and warm. I heard your keynote at the Wellness Summit last month. What you said about turning pain into purpose stayed with me. She turned. He was tall, with kind hazel eyes and a gentle smile that reached them easily. Dark hair neatly trimmed, a charcoal suit worn with the ease of someone comfortable in his skin. "Thank you," she replied. "I'm glad it landed. I'm Finn Callahan." He extended a hand. "I work with a few foundations focused on women's health and mental wellness." Brielle Harper. She shook his hand. Firm, steady, no lingering pressure. They talked for nearly an hour without realizing time had passed. He asked thoughtful questions about her process, her art, the decisions behind the app. He listened, really listened, without interrupting, without shifting focus to himself. When she mentioned the long months of feeling unseen, he nodded slowly. "That kind of invisibility leaves marks," he said quietly. "But the way you've chosen to make something meaningful from it, that's rare." She felt seen in a way that didn't demand performance. No grand gestures, no rush, just presence. They exchanged numbers before the night ended. He texted the next morning. "It was a genuine pleasure meeting you. If you're ever up for coffee or a walk, I'd love to continue the conversation. No pressure." She smiled at the screen. No pressure. She liked that. Their first outing was a late afternoon walk along the trails near Griffith Observatory. The air carried the scent of eucalyptus and dry earth. Sunlight filtered through oak leaves, dappling the path in gold. They walked side by side, pace unhurried. Finn asked about her favorite places in the city. She told him about quiet corners in Venice she still visited early mornings. He shared stories of childhood summers spent hiking in the Sierras. Conversation flowed easily, light at first, then deeper. He spoke about losing his younger sister to illness years earlier, how grief had taught him to hold space for others without trying to fix everything. "I learned that sometimes the most helpful thing is simply staying," he said. "Not solving, just staying." She glanced at him. "That's harder than it sounds." "It is," he agreed, "but it matters." They sat on a bench overlooking the city as the sun dipped lower. He didn't reach for her hand. He simply sat beside her, shoulder close enough to feel warmth without crossing boundaries. When she shivered slightly in the cooling air, he slipped off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders without asking. She pulled it closer, breathing in the faint scent of cedar and clean cotton. "Thank you," she said softly. He smiled. "Any time." Picnics became their ritual. A blanket spread on a grassy hill in Griffith Park, simple food, cheese, fruit, fresh bread, shared slowly. They talked about dreams that had shifted over time, fears they had learned to name, small joys they refused to let go of. One afternoon he brought a small sketchbook and asked if she would show him how she captured light on petals. She guided his hand, laughing when his lines wobbled. "You're not bad," she teased. "I have a good teacher." Kisses came slowly, naturally. The first happened weeks later, after a long walk that ended at a quiet overlook as the city lights began to flicker on below. He turned to her, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and asked softly, "May I?" She nodded. His lips met hers, gentle, careful, full of quiet reverence. No urgency, just the slow bloom of something new. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "I don't want to rush this," he whispered. "I want to do it right." She touched his cheek. "I don't want to rush either." Emotional intimacy grew alongside the physical. Late-night calls, when one of them couldn't sleep. Texts sharing small moments, a sunrise he photographed for her, a painting she finished and sent with a single heart emoji. He read every caption she posted online and left thoughtful comments, not performative praise, but real reflections that showed he had truly listened. With Finn, Brielle felt cherished in ways she hadn't known she still craved. He remembered details, her preference for oat milk in coffee, the way she tilted her head when thinking deeply, the quiet days when grief crept back and words felt too heavy. He never asked her to explain her past or justify her boundaries. He simply met her where she stood. One evening on her balcony, wrapped in a shared blanket, she rested her head on his shoulder. "I used to think being seen meant someone remembering every detail perfectly," she said. But you show me it's more than that. It's showing up consistently, even when the details are hard. He kissed her temple. You deserve consistency. You deserve someone who chooses you every day, not just on the good ones. She lifted her head to look at him. I'm starting to believe I do. He smiled softly. Good, because I'm planning to keep proving it. Blossom Hearts continued to flourish. New product lines launched. Journals with guided prompts for grief and gratitude. Apparel printed with affirmations drawn from customer stories. The app reached hundreds of thousands of users. Brielle spoke at more events, always returning to the same message. Healing begins when we stop waiting for permission to feel and start giving ourselves space to grow. Through it all, Finn remained steady, never crowding her success, never diminishing it. He attended her launches quietly in the back row, applauding when others did, hugging her fiercely when the room emptied. He celebrated her wins as though they were his own, yet never made them about him. In his presence, Brielle rediscovered joy that didn't depend on perfection. Laughter returned easily. Touch felt safe again. Love felt like partnership instead of performance. She had once believed the deepest cuts would always define her. With Finn, she began to understand they could become part of a larger, more beautiful story, one where being truly seen and cherished wasn't a rare gift, but the foundation. Cade first saw the headline during a late-night scroll in his too-quiet Santa Monica living room. The screen lit his face blue. From Heartbreak to Healing Empire, Blossom Hearts reaches 9. Figure valuation. The article featured a photograph of Brielle on stage, poised, radiant, speaking to a packed room. Her smile was the same one he remembered from their early days, yet softer now, steadier. He stared at the image until it blurred. He read every word. The piece detailed her journey. The small online shop born in a Silver Lake apartment, the vulnerable posts that drew thousands, the workshops that became movement, the app that helped people name their grief. Quotes from Brielle stood out in bold. I stopped waiting for someone to remember my worth. I claimed it myself. Pain doesn't disappear. It transforms when we give it space to teach us. Memories flooded in uninvited. Her laugh over coffee at Abbot Kinney. The way she tucked a lily behind her ear on their wedding day. The quiet mornings she painted while he coded beside her. The nights she cried in his arms after doctor visits. The kitchen floor where he had knelt and promised to stay. The note she left on the counter the day she walked out. He set the phone down and pressed his palms to his eyes. Regret tasted metallic, sharp. He had told himself the empire was for their future. He had believed distance was temporary. He had convinced himself she would wait. She hadn't. And she shouldn't have. He tried reaching out the next week. A bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite, delivered to the Blossom Hearts headquarters with a card. I see you now. I'm so sorry it took me this long. Cade. The flowers were accepted at reception. No reply came. He sent another arrangement the following month, lilies this time, with a longer note. Every success you've built reminds me of the woman I was too distracted to cherish. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I'm proud of you. Again. Silence. He called her number once, late at night when courage and loneliness collided. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Her voice, calm, unchanged, asked him to leave a message. He hung up without speaking. Months passed. ConnectSphere continued expanding. New offices in Europe, partnerships in Asia, but the victories felt hollow. He mentored younger founders now, emphasizing balance in ways he once ignored. He spoke less about valuation and more about people. The changes were small, internal, but real. Then came the invitation, a major tech and wellness conference in downtown LA. Brielle was listed as a keynote speaker. Cade registered the same day. He arrived early, took a seat in the front row, heart pounding harder than during any board presentation. The room filled steadily. Lights dimmed. Brielle walked onto the stage in a dress patterned with delicate florals, her own design. She carried no notes, only quiet confidence. She began without preamble. 2 years ago I believed my value depended on being remembered. I waited for someone to see my pain, to hold it with me. When that didn't happen, I thought the fault was mine. I thought if I stayed smaller, quieter, more patient, love would finally notice me. She paused, gaze sweeping the audience. But love that requires you to shrink isn't love. It's convenience. And I was done being convenient. The room stayed hushed. I left. I rebuilt. I painted my grief until it became something I could hold instead of something that held me. I shared it, not because I wanted pity, but because I knew someone else might be hiding the same ache. And in sharing, I found community. In community, I found strength. In strength, I found myself. She spoke for 30 minutes, honest, direct, without bitterness. She described turning silent nights into brushstrokes, loneliness into connection, heartbreak into purpose. She ended with words that landed like truth. Never wait for someone to hand you your worth. Claim it, build from it, bloom anyway. Because the most powerful thing you can do is decide that your story, every messy, beautiful part, deserves to be told. Applause rose like a wave, sustained, genuine. Brielle stepped off the stage, head high. Cade waited near the side exit. When she emerged, still glowing from the spotlight, their eyes met. She paused only a moment, then approached. Brielle. Cade. He swallowed. That was extraordinary. You were extraordinary. Thank you. He took a breath. I've watched from afar, read everything, seen what you've created. I'm so proud of you. And I'm so sorry. For the forgetting, for the distance, for every time I chose the wrong priority. She studied him, no anger in her gaze, only calm clarity. I heard you tried to send flowers. I did. I wanted you to know I see you now. Not just the success, the courage it took to walk away and build something better. She nodded slowly. I appreciate that. Truly. He stepped closer, voice low. I don't expect anything. I just needed to say it in person. I failed you, and I'm working every day to become someone who doesn't fail the people who matter. Brielle looked at him for a long moment. Then, she opened her arms. He stepped into the embrace, careful, brief, bittersweet. She held him the way old friends hold each other after time apart. No clinging, just acknowledgement. When they parted, she touched his arm lightly. I'm glad you're changing, she said. Not for me, for you. You deserve that too. He nodded, throat tight. I hope one day we can be in the same room without pain between us. Maybe, she replied gently. Time will show us. She offered a small smile, the same one that once lit up his mornings, then turned and walked toward the group waiting to congratulate her. Cade stayed where he was, watching her disappear into the crowd. For the first time in years, regret felt less like punishment and more like a quiet vow. He would keep changing. Not to win her back, but because she had shown him what it looked like to choose yourself, and he wanted to learn how to do the same. Outside, the city lights stretched endless and bright. He stepped into the night carrying something new, not hope of reunion, but gratitude for the woman who had once loved him, and the man he was finally becoming because of it. Brielle's life in the years that followed unfolded with the steady grace of a garden that has finally found its right soil. Blossom Hearts grew beyond anything she once imagined. Products carried in major retailers across the country, the app downloaded millions of times, partnerships with mental health organizations that offered free access to underserved communities. She spoke at international conferences, always returning to the same core message: pain is not a dead end, it is fertile ground when met with intention. She and Finn built a home together in a quiet canyon near Topanga. Simple lines, open windows, a garden where wildflowers grew alongside the ones she planted. Mornings began with coffee on the deck, watching fog lift from the hills. Evenings ended with slow dances in the living room, barefoot on hardwood floors, music low enough that they could hear each other breathe. He still asked permission before every kiss, even after years together, and she still rose onto her toes to meet him halfway. Their intimacy remained gentle, deliberate. Hands that knew every curve, lips that lingered, bodies that moved with the certainty of being fully wanted. Finn never asked her to forget the past. Instead, he honored it by showing up consistently, remembering small dates she once marked alone, holding space when old grief surfaced without warning, celebrating her wins with quiet pride rather than possession. When she traveled for work, he sent voice notes she could listen to on long flights, simple messages like thinking of you under this big sky. Come home to me soon. She kept every one saved. One afternoon in the garden, she knelt among lavender and rosemary, dirt under her nails, and looked up to find him watching from the porch. He carried 2 glasses of iced tea, condensation already beading on the sides. You look happy, he said, handing her one. She took a sip, then set the glass on the stone wall. I am. Not because everything is perfect, because I finally understand that perfect isn't the goal. Showing up for myself, and for someone who shows up for me, that's the goal. He sat beside her on the low wall. Their shoulders touched. You taught me that too. She leaned her head against his. We taught each other. Their life together was not without challenges. Days when old memories surfaced, nights when work kept one of them away. But they faced each difficulty with the same quiet commitment, conversation instead of silence, presence instead of promises, love expressed through actions rather than declarations alone. Brielle no longer feared being forgotten. She had learned she could never be erased. Not by anyone, not even by her own past. Across the city, in the same Santa Monica townhouse that once echoed with her absence, Cade lived differently. He sold a portion of his stake in Connect Sphere, not out of failure, but out of clarity. The money funded scholarships for young entrepreneurs who prioritized well-being alongside growth. He stepped back from daily operations and began mentoring full-time, weekly sessions with founders who reminded him of his younger self, ambitious but untested in the cost of neglect. He spoke openly now about balance. In interviews, he no longer led with valuation numbers. He led with lessons. Success without empathy is hollow. I learned that the hard way. The people who stand beside you deserve more than your leftovers. He never remarried. He dated occasionally, always careful, always honest about the man he had been and the man he was still becoming. He kept a small painting of Brielle's on his office wall, a single bloom against a soft dawn sky, one she had given him years earlier during happier times. It served as quiet reminder, not of loss, but of growth. He and Brielle never rekindled romance. Their paths crossed rarely at industry events through mutual friends, but each encounter carried less weight over time. A nod, a brief smile, a shared understanding that both had walked through fire and come out changed. He respected her boundaries. She acknowledged his effort. Closure arrived not in grand gestures, but in the gentle release of what once was. The story of Brielle and Cade became something larger than their 2 lives. It lived in the captions she wrote, the prompts in her app, the conversations at her workshops. Women and men heard it and recognized pieces of themselves. The slow erosion of being overlooked, the courage it takes to walk away, the power that blooms when you choose yourself first. The morals settled into the hearts of those who listened. Value your partner's pain as carefully as you value your own. A relationship cannot thrive when one person's hurt is treated as background noise. True partnership means carrying each other's burdens, not perfectly, but persistently. Self-love is not selfish, it is the foundation everything else stands on. When you stop waiting for someone else to affirm your worth, you free yourself to build a life that reflects it. Empowerment begins the moment you decide your story belongs to you. True romance is partnership, not possession. It is built on remembrance, consistency, and mutual growth. It asks both people to rise together, and if one cannot, it allows the other to rise alone, without apology, without diminishment. Brielle's legacy was never the valuation or the headlines. It was the quiet shift she sparked in thousands of lives. Women who began painting their grief, men who learned to listen more deeply, couples who recommitted to showing up, individuals who finally believed they deserved to be fully seen. She stood on stages around the world and ended every talk the same way. You are not defined by what was taken from you. You are defined by what you choose to grow from it. Bloom anyway. You were always meant to. And in homes across cities and small towns, people did. They painted. They wrote. They loved more intentionally. They remembered. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own worth, your own strength, or the love you deserve, Let's carry that feeling forward together. Like this video right now to spread the love to someone who needs to feel seen today. Comment below. What is your biggest takeaway from Brielle's journey? Share one lesson that landed with you. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read. Share this with a friend, a family member, anyone who could use a reminder that they are worthy of real partnership and deep healing. And if these romantic, uplifting tales that honor growth and real emotion move you, subscribe to Lord of Hearts and turn on notifications. We're here every week with stories that remind you, your heart matters, your story matters, you matter. You deserve stories that lift you up. You deserve to bloom. See you in the next one.